Morning, my name is Chris Raymer. How y'all doing this morning? It's a nice kind of a chilly morning up here in the hills, and sure good to be here with you. And hope all of y'all are being safe and sound. Gosh, I've gotten a gazillion emails from y'all. Like I said, y'all are gonna get tired of me saying this, but gee whiz, it's the coolest to get a chance to talk to so many of y'all I haven't talked to in ages. So you, at the end of this video, on all of the videos that we're doing on this little section here, we're gonna, there'll be my little email on there and a phone number that you guys can call. And if you want to call and comment or visit or ask questions, you're more than welcome to do that. I've answered a bunch of questions email-wise, so I sure appreciate it. I want to remind y'all always when we're doing these little short 30-minute little sessions, this is a treatment center deal for our alumni. We were just trying to come up with something for y'all to do while you're sequestered and hole up in the house someplace in your pajamas. You might be able to listen to something and just little simple step studies for y'all. And these were not meant to be disseminated in the AA community. In keeping with the Sixth tradition, we want to try to not offend anybody in that way. We're going to talk about treatments, folks. We're going to mention treatment centers, so we don't want to do that. So bless you for helping us with that. In the first few sessions, we did we did 2 and 3 last week, and I'm going to do 4 and 5 now, and I can hear some of you now. How could you possibly do 4 and 5 in a 30-minute session? It's real simple. Well, actually, I won't do 5. I'm going to do 4 for sure. But it's real simple to do because it's one of my big soapboxes out there. One of the things we've done in all of our 12-step fellowships is complicate the devil out of this 4-step process. It was never intended to be that complicated. It was a pretty simple thing to do. The whole purpose of this was to get this stuff called resentment out in the open. It's an inventory, and what we want to do is we want to look at this stuff. What are the things that we are truly resentful at? And from this inventory, we're gonna see a lot of cool stuff. We're gonna get to inventory some character defects, and we're gonna get some ideas, some amends that we got to do. And there's an old saying, a little old Buddha saying, it says, "You will not be punished for your anger. You will be punished by your anger." Gosh, I've known some people that were just bitter people, and compromised health, compromised sobriety, all because they couldn't get past a resentment. And I don't know. This is one of the things that set me free. I spent a lot of years around Alcoholics Anonymous not feeling a part of. And I finished a little 4-step, and I guarantee you it was the first time I ever felt like I was actually doing what I was supposed to be doing in these rooms. And some of y'all that were patients here, you remember we have this little 4-step guide that we've taken right straight out of the big book. There's no added stuff in here. It's just all, the instructions are here. And I've got it on Dropbox, and I can send it to you in a heartbeat. If you guys want to use one, you feel free. There's nothing that mentions treatment in here, but you could use it with your the little folks that you sponsor. So you're more than welcome with that. This is going to be like a fact-finding mission, folks. Again, I repeat, I'll go back to it over. It's an inventory. Too many people believe that what this is just confession. You know, we used to have a guy out here that used to drive me crazy. He used to talk about it. Well, you know, I did my 5th step with a bum on the street, and you know, and it's just like, guys, you know, this is more than that. This is, you know, a sponsor, somebody that knows what this is about, is going to be able to see you a lot of help you find your truth, for heaven's sakes, about what's going on. This is not a life story. It's vignettes of your life story. We don't need all the details. Too often what happens is we spend way too much time with the details. Page 64 to 71 are where we talk about these steps, the particular steps. And there's 3 inventories. There's a resentment inventory, where we list the people, institutions, and principles we're mad at, we're resentful at, and then we have little 2-column fear inventory, and then we have a little 9-question sex inventory about our relationships. And through that, I mean, you're going to get a pretty amazing vignette of your life if you can jot that down. If you can get honest, and that's what I do generally when I start the 4-step process, I get quiet. When I do one now, guys, I'm 32 years sober, and I still do. I go through one every year. I do it with the guys I sponsor, and I ask God, I said, God, show me the people I'm resentful at. And then I start writing. Again, one of the biggest mistakes that we make, especially folks coming out of treatment, a lot of times they're instructed, it's just something to take up time. So they're instructed to write, a gazillion names down. My guideline is this, folks. You can take it or run with it, whatever. If you haven't thought of that person in 20 years, don't even think about putting him on this list. It's a waste of time. You're going to have to do some writing around this, and it's pointless. You've got plenty. I've always said it. You've got plenty in the top 10 to keep you busy for quite a while doing some writing. I'd rather see you get the top 10 or 20 resentments on paper and deal with that than to sit there for weeks and weeks and months sometimes making a list. I'm working on my list. It just makes me crazy. Come on, guys. It's just real simple. Sit down. You can do this whole thing in an afternoon. I mean, literally. You want to spend a day on it? That's good. Take the day off. Oh, some of you have. You can work on that. This stuff of just taking... I got people all the time says, well, I work on it a little bit every day. That's my experiences. That's a bad way to do it. I like to get into a mode with it. It's like washing dishes. I'm going to wash all the dishes all at once and get it all done. And I'm not going to go wash 2 forks and then go back and watch TV and come back and wash the cereal bowl. Let's just get this whole thing done, folks. After we do a 3rd step prayer, the next paragraph says, next, we launched out on a course of vigorous action. Launched out on a course of vigorous action. Making a pretty good point here, guys, what he wants us to do. Hurry up. If you read the archival stuff, if you talk to the old-timers, none of those guys took... a few pages is all they wrote. They weren't out there writing these novelettes that some people... We went through this big old deal back in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s out there. There was this big trend to do these long 5th steps. There's a speaker out there, and I won't mention him, but he talks about, we set aside 10 hours and we're going to throw some pillows on the floor and we're going to do this 5th step. I was like, oh my God, I'm not... And we're the most selfish, self-centered people on earth, and I'm going to give you 10 hours to talk? No, I'm not. Come on, guys, let's hit the high spots and let's move on. First time through an inventory, guys, a couple of hours for sure. It's going to take some time, 2 or 3 hours at the max. Any more than that, you're just rambling. You're just talking to hear your head rattle. And that's the biggest job with a sponsor, listening to a 5th step. And we'll talk about that later. But anyway, if you sit down with that little list and you put the list of people, institutions, groups of people, or principles, ideas that you have problems with, if you put that on the list, basically what we're going to do after we get that is we're going to put it on columns. You can see this. I put the little guy up here. Who the person is? My mom, and then the cause. What the reason you're mad at, and you may have 4 or 5 resentments against mom. Then just number them: 1, 2, 3, 4. Pretty simple. Affects my. There's an area on the book that'll show you. If you look at that little guide, it tells you specifically there's 7 areas that could be affected by these resentments. My pride, my pocketbook, my self-esteem. It'll give you a whole list of things. But you're going to look and see it's a numbers game, because you get to see I've got this one lousy little resentment and how it affects so many areas of my life. It's pretty telling. You could also kind of look and see what characters you're using in this. The 4th column, folks, is a little place you get to where we talk about our mistakes. Now, in the big book, there's a dramatic stop. He says, and Bill Wilson makes this clear point. Now we're going to stop looking at other people. We're going to start looking at our mistakes. I'm going to tell you now, I'm going to do it on film. I'll apologize for some of the talks I did in early days when I was getting sober and around. I would do workshops, and I would always make the same mistake that so many many of y'all may, I would always talk about my part. Now, what was my part? And I got to tell you, there was a wonderful man up in Seattle, a nice member of a fellowship, that came up after one of my workshops and corrected me and made a very clear point. He was the sweetheart of a guy, and he was very, very nice about it. But he brought it to my attention that there were a lot of these situations that I didn't play a part in, but there were some mistakes I did make around that. You slide up next to somebody that's been molested as a child and try to explain they have a part in this. It makes me sad to think sometimes some of you have such a load to carry. But if we can look at some little mistakes we can make along the way, then we can get free of the resentment. I've said this from a million podiums. This whole purpose of this is going to allow us to stop being victims. Victimized people get sober every day. Victims don't. You see the difference? This person over here harmed you hugely, and maybe you harbored this and talked trash about him over here. You played this little piece over here. If you can see that you made a mistake over here, you can get free of the whole resentment. If you can't, then you'll continue to be victimized by it. You'll continue to play the part of someone hurt in this deal. That terminal uniqueness is what kills alcoholics and addicts. You don't understand. My case is different. And guys, if we can get down here with this inventory, you're going to be golden. It'll happen so fast it'll make your head swim when you start seeing the truth. And we'll talk about that in the next session. But if you write these things down, basically you're just going to go across the line. I'm going to go down. I'm going to put the person, you can save space and put the next person if you want to stay organized that way. But you can go across, and the cause affected the areas, and then my mistakes. You're looking for, where was I? Dishonest, selfish, self-seeking. Anytime you're judging somebody, you're being selfish. That's what that means. Selfish, self-seeking, fearful, or dishonest. I mean, dishonesty shows up in so much. Fear shows up in so much. I can give you an example. How many times I'm mad at somebody, affected some girl usually, and affected my personal relations, sex relations, my pride, my pocketbook. But I look at my mistakes in that deal. I stayed in that relationship because I was the fear of being alone. There were a lot of times I could have gotten out, but I didn't. I stayed anyway. So, I start looking at what kind of I played a piece of this. And I can get free. I'm not saying you caused it to happen every time. Sometimes you did. Sometimes it's not. Just if you can see a little mistake, you can get free of that. I've got to mention something that's kind of controversial sometimes. I wouldn't think it would be. On the top of page 66 in the book, it says, sometimes it was remorse, and then we were sore at ourselves. Now, who are we supposed to be putting on this list? Are people we're sore at, people we're resentful at. Guys, the book is telling you to put your name on this list. I do workshops all over creation, and I'll do these workshops, and I'll talk about this from the podium, and I guarantee, and then we're going to break and have coffee, and everybody comes up. I'll have 5 guys walking up to the podium, want to take exception with that. Well, my sponsor said I don't put my name on the list. Okay. My big book says we do. Because I got to tell you, folks, some of you guys, and I think most of you can identify with this, most of you, if I treated you, I said it the other day, if I treated you the way you treat yourself, they'd arrest me. Some of you, your own worst enemy is you. You beat yourself up non-stop. That shame and that guilt and that remorse around how we treated our families and how we treated our co-workers, and as a result of our illness. God, come on, guys, we need to deal with this stuff. We need to look at that. A lot of a lot of the information that you're going to need downstream from your 8-step list, for your 9-step amends, is going to come from that little area right there that you end up over in this fourth column about yourself. So by all means, put your name on that inventory. Y'all good? All right. Be sure, look at that number at the bottom when you finish, because I guarantee you, if you got questions, call me. Won't take long to answer. It's amazing to me how many people, they'll start working on this, they'll get confused, and then they'll just stop. It's like, guys, if you get confused, call somebody. Or email me, whatever. Had an old guy out here that used to work out here, he used to tell patients all the time, he says, if you don't have at least 300 names on your inventory, you're not doing a thorough inventory. Again, I'm going to repeat myself, that's just ridiculous. I mean, what, you hated everybody you ever met? That's ridiculous. Just, come on guys, get the big stuff out. That's what we care about. And I'll repeat myself, if you're taking longer than a couple of days at the most to do this, you're getting too much detail. All right, just my thought. Fear inventory, on page 67 and 68, it talks out pretty good. There's a great line in there, because it was an evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our existence was shot through with it. One of my favorite lines in the big book. 16 pages in the big book, Bill Wilson talks about fear. We're just riddled with it. And everything I do, just my life is riddled, especially today with the things that are going on out there with the stupid virus. I mean, come on guys, some of us, I deal with it on a regular basis. You know, 32 years sober, that stuff can still crop up, and I need to do exactly what the big book is asking me to do. The inventory itself, as it lines out, is to simplify it as simple as can be. Put the fear and then why you think you have it. Because the book on page 68 is going to tell you, it wasn't because self-reliance failed us. I mean, and it goes back and talks about relying on God instead of our finite self, the infinite God. That's what we're supposed to do. But look at the fear, put it down. And I used to think I wasn't afraid of everything, and it turned out I was afraid of a whole bunch of stuff. My Mark used to sponsor me, used to say, he says, guys, why don't you just make a list of things you're not afraid of? It'd be shorter. It's just, God, money, you know, relationships, it's just infinite. Go on. Getting old, that's a big one. Falling off my bike. I mean, the list is horrendous. Some of it more than others, but let's deal with it, because I got to tell you, there's a lot of relief by looking at it on paper and understanding how much of my life is spent trying to battle this myself, when I don't have to do that anymore. I've just done a third step prayer asking God to be my Father. God to be our Creator, to guide us. I'm dependent on another power today, and it works. Simple enough. Sex inventory is pretty simple. On page 69, the specific questions that you're looking for. On this form, it'll show you, it's asking specifically about the questions. Too often what happens is we write these big old long scenarios, and again, you could be a victim. Back of the resentment inventory, it's the same stuff. You could be put the who you're resentful at, and then the cause. Again, we're looking for 2 or 3 sentences at the most. It's kind of like a haiku. You know, it's Japanese poetry. Just short and to the point, 3 lines. You could do a little bit more, guys, if you want to write a little quick paragraph. But I've seen people who are writing page after page after page. You're just justifying why you're resentful at this person. Just specifically, it's an inventory. Just put it down, short and sweet, and then how it affected you, and then, yeah. But it's the same with the sex inventory. I sit down with people, guys I sponsor sometimes, and they sit down and they got 2 pages with details around this relationship. I don't care. It's got nothing to do with what we're trying to accomplish here. We're trying to find out specifically where, here are the questions that we're asking. It says, write a brief history about the relationship. You know, if you want to give a few details about it, that's perfectly okay. What actions of mine were selfish? What actions of mine were dishonest? Where was I inconsiderate? Who was hurt in this action in the relationship? Be sure to remember, guys, be thinking about this, because we're going to get our amends list from this. A lot of times the girl I dated was hurt, and I put her name down, but I forget that she had 2 kids. I forget that there were in-laws involved, and I hurt them in the process. They got caught up in all the fights and all the other. I just have to look at the whole picture. Where was I? What actions of mine aroused jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? Where was I at fault? What should I have done instead? Oh man. See, from this particular point in time, what we'll be able to look at, we'll be able to shape a sane, sound sex ideal from this inventory. We can stop making the same stupid mistakes. Notice in here, it never did say, when it's asking those questions, it never did say specifically about what we were, it never asked about sex. It never talked about, I mean, I got guys out there that want to give this pornographic detail of all the stuff that happened and blah, blah, blah. I am so not interested. In fact, if they start that stuff, I'll stop them. If I'm doing a sex inventory the way the book outlines, I could technically, I don't, but I could technically sit down with a woman and do this sex inventory. We're not talking about sex. We're talking about my behavior towards that woman. Y'all see the difference? Don't get caught up in all that craziness. I had to put people on my sex inventory that I heard a guy say it one time in AA in a meeting that was talked about, well, you know, if you had sex with them, you need to put them on the inventory. Well, I agree with that, but there were women out there I never had sex with, but there were definite relationship there. There was an inappropriate, overly, on my part, flirtatious relationship with that person. And I'm thinking I'm being funny, and I'm not realizing that I'm hurting that person. I'm not paying attention. Words have power. And I'm leading somebody on, thinking something's going to happen. And I mean, that's the behavior I have to look at. I mean, I like to think I'm a pretty nice guy, but I look back at some of the crazy stuff I used to do out there based on selfish and self-centered motives that I am mortified about. And I was grateful that we had an opportunity when we sat down and wrote this stuff down on paper so that we could get some clarity about it, which is pretty simple. I was going to read you something and I forgot, but I'm going to read it now real quick. This is not in the big book. Marianne Williamson wrote it. I love her writings. The spiritual meaning of every situation is not what happens to us, but who we decide to become because of what happens to us. Oh, I love it. I love it. I can send it to you if you want. What we're going to get from this is one thing, and we're going to get the truth. I can sit down and have a conversation with you and be all over the page and still stay confused about something. But when I do what the big book is asking me, and I'm not going to split hairs whether you can do it on a computer or not, I get the same results doing that. But if I sit down with an old busted up pencil and a legal tablet and start putting this on paper, I can't tell you how many times I've started writing something and looked at it for a second and then erased it because it was a lie. It didn't hold true. Avoid in these first columns, guys, when you're looking at the cause, avoid words like always and never. Because that's just not true. She was never there for me. That's not true. That's not true. Often when I needed her, she wasn't there. That's true. But you see, if you lie in the second column, you're going to be lost in the fourth column. I mean, this whole thing is a fact-finding mission. We're looking for one thing and one thing only. We're looking for truth. That's what we're trying to get at. And another quote somebody had said, I'll let you guys run. I need to mention, yeah, well, no, maybe I won't. The problem isn't our past. It's our refusal to accept it as past. My past made me stronger, not because it happened, but because I got through it. Oh, I love it. I talk to so many people, folks, of course, in this industry. I've worked in this business a long time, and I watch so many people that get all busted up, and they come up and they get some fine counseling, and I mean, therapy, guys. I'm going to tell you, I'm a huge fan, and they get in there with a counselor that knows what they're doing, and pretty soon they're never going to forget that stuff that happened, but they're going to be able to walk through it and see the truth around it and learn from it. And then get to the place where they realize that it's the past. But because they've gotten through it, I know y'all think this is canned, but they're going to be able to turn around and help somebody else get through it too. I've never seen it fail. Guys, I mentioned it on a lot of these talks. I get tired of talking to people out there in the recovery land that want to talk about an experience that they don't have any experience with. We talked about it on our first video. There's a lot of people out there that have never done 4 steps that want to continually talk about it in meetings. You can't talk about it if you've never done it, if you've never experienced it. And that's why it's so important that we have all of us in these rooms. Every single one of us, guys, getting down and learning our truth and walking through, getting into some peace and contentment on the other side of it. Now you're able to turn around, and my experience is God continues to drop people in my life that I'm able to help. And and it absolutely amazes me when I can do that. But unless I get through it, and if I remain victim around it, then I won't be able to help them. All we'll just sit there and cry and feel sorry for each other and commiserate. That's not what that person needs. That person needs empathy. He needs to have somebody there that understands what he's been through and perhaps help him get to the other side, point him in the right direction. And as far as I'm concerned, that's exactly what it's about, folks. I mentioned this, most of the inventories that I do with guys that I sponsor and stuff, like I said, 20 to 30 resentments first time through is about normal. And any more than that, again, you're splitting hairs. I go back and, if you're going to put that little kid in kindergarten on there, you are absolutely just wasting time. So, if some people have a lot of resentment, some people don't have very many. If all you can come up with is 10 resentments, then put 10. I'd rather see you again do the 10 and get through the other side than to sit there and spin your wheels forever because you're embarrassed because you don't have a whole bunch of resentments. We're all different. Every one of us. Bless you guys. Y'all stay in touch, and I'll talk to you next time. Thanks.